After living on cruise ships for over a year, I'm finally ready to share my honest mistakes that I made on my first cruise. I had no idea what I was doing. This video topic has been on my list since the very beginning, but I think it's taken this last year for me to finally be comfortable to share my cruise confessions and the mistakes that I made. Even though I've lived on cruise ships for the last year, I've actually only started cruising about three and a half years ago. And those first few cruises, I made so many mistakes. Some of them huge mistakes and very expensive mistakes. Let me tell you all about it. Hi everyone, I'm Laura and welcome to Living on Cruise Control, where just over a year ago, I left the corporate grind to pursue my dream of living full-time on cruise ships. I've had this topic on my video idea list since probably before I even posted my first video. I didn't know if I should start with this topic of all the mistakes I made. Some of them I'm a bit embarrassed about. I should have known better. I consider myself to be a pretty smart person, although I'm directionally challenged.
I'm already directionally challenged, so coming across a map like this in Italy.
Oui, enfin, celle qu'on a croisée tout à l'heure. Donc, faut remonter.
I had no idea what I was doing. And even after watching so many YouTube videos, doing a ton of research, I had no idea what was involved with a cruise. I was on a cruise by myself and oblivious to the traps people can fall into, to be perfectly honest, the traps. Let's go back to my very first cruise. I was working in Amsterdam. We had meetings in Amsterdam. It was my birthday, and I thought, why not extend this work trip into a vacation to celebrate my birthday? And at that time thought it would be a great idea to take a cruise. There was a Holland America cruise on the Rotterdam, Amsterdam for 14 days round trip, and went to all the Baltic countries. It was an amazing cruise. However, I fell victim to a lot of traps and mistakes that new cruisers may not be aware of. So let's start with my confession number one. I'm just going to go big. Confession number one, I bought art. At that time, I had no idea that I would be living and working in India. I had no idea that I would be living on cruise ships and not even have a wall to hang art on. I went to the auctions and I was drinking the free champagne, and I just fell for the allure of this is an investment. The money that you're spending on art, you can pass down to your children and grandchildren. And the art was so pretty. I went and visited the gallery almost every day. It kept being pulled to this Peter Max painting of an angel with hearts, and I just thought it was really beautiful. But what really got me was the auctioneer's story about Peter Max and this mom who had a child that was sick with cancer. She had asked Peter Max to create a painting for her daughter, and he created Angel with Hearts. And let me share a little bit of that auction with you.
Why? Can anyone tell me the artist?
Peter Max.
Peter Max is absolutely correct. Now, with regards to the Peter Maxes, just about all of them, he has these very popular subject matters that he does. It's very seldom that you see something drastically different by Max. And each of these subject matters has its own story. Now, this particular one over here has a very sad story, but a very beautiful one at that. So some time ago, there was a girl who really loved Peter Max's work. And she had cancer. And her mother, tending to her in a hospital bed, wrote to Peter Max saying that she would like some of his work. Can you send her something? And he didn't send her anything. He went there himself. And he spent the day with her, painting, drawing, doing something really, really special for this girl who had a life-threatening disease. He said that she had a beautiful heart. This particular work of art here is called the Angel with Heart, a representation of her, not only her spirit, but her fighting ability. And this particular work of art is a representation of lost loved ones, specifically to cancer. A representation of what Peter Max did for that goal, and how you can never truly forget the people that mean the most to us. Now, in whatever shape or form that may take, whether people have lost loved ones to cancer before, or whether through other ways and means of it happening, the artwork itself means something different to each person. And that's why art is such a phenomenal medium for everybody. The reason for that is it has an emotional value that you simply cannot match. There's nothing that you can match with regards to that sentimental feeling that we get when we look at something that means more than just the face value that you see in the artworks. Heartbreaking story, but a beautiful one nonetheless. On stage, I have CP309. It's an angel with heart, acrylic painting on canvas, hand signed by the artist with an estimated retail price of $29,700.
It just so turned out that my mom had passed away from cancer, and the last gift she ever gave me were these little angel Christmas ornaments. He just had me going, and I was envisioning having this art that would be passed down to my grandchild in the future, and just completely this feeling and emotion and illusion of it, you know, in my future great-great-grandchild's bedroom, hanging on the wall in honor of my mom's memory. And once that hook is in your heart, it was really hard to say no. And it was free financing with 0% interest, immediately approved. And it would ship for free back to the home that I had in Arizona at that time. And I thought, how cool. I'm here in Northern Europe. I'd never even really been to Europe other than passing through on a connecting flight. I'd never really spent a lot of time in Europe at that point. It was my first cruise. I honestly thought that this art gallery event was like a one-time event. It was only on this cruise. It was only on this cruise ship. It was only on this cruise line. And it was only during my 14-day cruise. Little did I know, most cruises that I've been on since then have the same art gallery with the same artists and very similar paintings and events. I had no idea. I completely got pulled in. Even when I sobered up the next morning and thought about it, my heart was still hooked into this vision of this investment for my future great-grandchildren. It was such a big mistake. When I tell you that I spent over $20,000 on art years ago, and the true confession, or the second part of this confession, is that piece of art is still in its original packing crate. It is never hung on a nail. It is never hung on a wall. It has not been admired or appreciated. I did finally pay it off, so I don't owe any money on it, but it is never hung on a wall because not soon after that time is when I was traveling and talking about the potential to go live in India and spend time in India. And so at that point, it made more sense to keep it in its original wooden crate so that it wouldn't get ruined or damaged, because I'd never spent that much money on art. I've never even spent that much money on furniture. In fact, I'm not even sure. I guess my car costs more than that, but that's about it. Otherwise, there's nothing that I'd ever owned that I would pay more than $20,000 for. Huge mistake. And I'm actually in the process of selling this piece of art. So if you have any interest in a Peter Max painting, or you know, or have any recommendations of where I could sell this art, because obviously I have no place to hang it. And I think what's really important to share, if you're in, you know, my age bracket or this point in your life where you think and want and are envisioning holding on to all of these things for your kids or your grandkids or your great-great-great-grandkids at some point in the future, there's a likelihood that they may not be interested in that design, and they may not have the same heartfelt connection to that material item that you have. And it's important to think about that if you're in the process of doing any type of downsizing or decluttering. Really think through, are the connections to these things the same for me? Are they going to be the same for my kids or future great grandkids that I haven't even met yet, that they are for me? And many times they're not. So before you make that mistake or investment, I highly recommend that you don't go to the art auction drinking the Prosecco or sparkling wine when making important financial decisions. And I do know that there are people that collect art and come to the art auctions and even come on cruise ships because they really enjoy the investment in this art. So absolutely appreciate that. I know it's a huge business and a profitable business, but for me at that time, and not knowing what my near to immediate future was going to look like, I have no use for expensive art. It's just expensive art is just not a good fit for my life these days. Okay. Mistake number 2. Not only did I feel the need to book an excursion at every port that we stopped in on this 14-day cruise, I think there were 10 or 11 ports, or a lot of ports. Not only did I feel the need to book an excursion for every port because I wanted to get the most out of my money and the most out of that experience, not knowing if I'd ever be back to that country or city again, or if I'd even be on a cruise again. Little did I know, but at that time I didn't know if I'd ever even be on a cruise again. And I wanted to make sure that my excursions were the longest possible. So if we had 10 hours in port, my excursion was 9.5 hours. And I booked all of my excursions through the cruise line because I thought it was so important to not miss the ship and get stranded in a foreign country and not know what to do. Not only did I spend a lot of money on these excursions, I was exhausted because I was up early and then back on the ship late, up early the next day, back on the ship late. And you spend a lot of time going to the meeting places for your group excursions, getting to transportation, being transported from one place to the next place, and you're listening to hours of history and lectures.
So interesting is that the Soviet War Memorial was built on the British sector, so on the western side. Yeah? The Brandenburg Gate in front of you shows you where the Soviet sector began. Yeah?
Going from place to place to place. Looking back, I did not really plan for any plan B. I did not do any of the ports on my own. I didn't take a break. I was going to the point where I was exhausted by the time I got back to Amsterdam. I just felt like I needed to make the most of this time, the most out of the money that I had spent on this cruise. It was pretty expensive, and I felt like this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I wanted to make sure that I got every single minute out of every single port day. I don't recommend doing that at all. Absolutely need to have a plan B, some downtime, some half-day tours, some do-it-yourself ports, even some times when you're just wandering around and exploring on your own. Hire a private driver. There's a lot of other options. You don't need to book a cruise ship excursion for the longest duration possible on every single port day of a cruise. I definitely don't recommend that. It was costly and exhausting. My next cruise confession is each day I took the daily schedule of the following day, especially on sea days, and made a list of every single thing I wanted to go to. And I booked myself back to back to back to back to back. I needed to go to the event at the jewelry store. I needed to make sure I made it to the pamper party for the spa. I needed to go to every single show. I made sure I didn't miss any events that were happening. I was going literally back and forth between the music at the rock show, the music at the jazz, back and forth to the show in the arena, back to this event, to the next event, and didn't take the opportunity to actually relax and enjoy the ship or enjoy the experience. I feel like I barely even saw my cruise cabin. I felt such FOMO that I was going to be missing out if I didn't highlight and schedule every single thing, even the slightest interesting. Every craft event, every musical show, every cooking tour, every tour of the kitchen. I mean, I literally had to do everything. And it was such overload because I'd never been on a cruise before. So just acclimating to the movement of the ship and the timing, between sunrises and sunsets and getting ready for meals and going to the shows. And I had no experience and hadn't gotten into any kind of a rhythm. I just felt like I was constantly behind and rushing just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. My next cruise confession, I booked expensive spa treatments. I got a massage, I got a facial, I had shampoo blow dries done, and I did not look at any of the specials that may have been going on or ways to bundle different treatments together. I just went into the spa on the first day, looked at the menu. I'm not even sure that I looked at the prices. And I definitely didn't realize that it was so expensive and there was an automatic gratuity added on top of it. A lot more expensive than these treatments are generally on land. I just felt like I'm on vacation. I earned it. I deserved it. It's my birthday week and I'm going to treat myself. Looking back on it, I definitely could have gotten these treatments at either a spa manager special or waiting for a $50 discount, or maybe just picking one treatment instead of trying a hair treatment, a massage treatment, and a facial all on one cruise. I don't think that's very necessary. At the end of the day, I don't even feel like it really relaxed me in the way that I had hoped. My next cruise confession is I thought the drink package meant all drinks were included. I didn't realize there were limitations or certain alcohol items that were not included until I was more than halfway through my cruise. So I was probably on day 9 or 10 before I realized that bottles of wine were actually only a 25% discount on this particular cruise, not completely free. I didn't even bother to ask or double check if what I was ordering was included in the package. I was so used to ordering bottles of wine, not necessarily glasses of wine, because either I'm having a meal with friends or a work event and picking a good bottle of wine to go with dinner is just a habit. Not the best habit, but it definitely was a habit. And so I was ordering a bottle of wine and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes taking the rest of that bottle back to my room. I had even ordered room service bottles of wine, good wine. And again, just my own naivete and ignorance by not asking and double checking to see if what I was ordering was included in the package, because it wasn't. And at that time too, I didn't know how to review my folio. Was definitely so inexperienced. And I think the biggest mistake is I felt like I was in vacation mode, once in a lifetime mode. I'll never get this opportunity again. And making decisions that are financially impactful based on that need and urgency of it has to happen now because there may never be another chance for this opportunity again. I think that is a huge mistake and a costly mistake, because you can always get a bottle of wine. You can always go shopping for art. You can always go get a massage. Those things exist everywhere throughout the world. And this feeling of I need to get my money's worth and I have to do it right now because I may never be in this city again. I may never be on vacation again, I think is a fallacy that you can easily fall into, and it can definitely impact your decision making. Okay, this is another big one that it's hard for me to admit, but I figured it's time to come clean. So if you're finding this video informational or inspirational, then please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another update of my journey living full-time on cruise ships. That first cruise, I did not know anything about the casino programs and point systems and free cruise programs, and I definitely didn't know anything about Holland America's program. I had been to Vegas. I'd understood and enjoyed playing blackjack, and I knew how to play by the rules. And I thought if I played blackjack at the $25 minimum table, which at that time was the highest table, they didn't have $100 tables, $25 minimum was the highest. I was betting $50 to $100. Sometimes I would play two hands at the same time. So I was easily putting up $25 to $300, $400 per hand, and refilling my Chardonnay glass consistently each evening. When I got back from my long days of excursions, I would have dinner, listen to some music, go see a show, and then go play blackjack. And by then, I had already had some wine at dinner, and they absolutely keep your wine glass full. And I don't believe that they're counting those glasses of Chardonnay. But as the night continued, I can honestly confess that I closed down that casino a few times during that first cruise. And the hardest part is I wasn't really paying attention to my budget. I wasn't paying attention or tracking my wins and losses. At the end of the day, even with putting that much time into the casino and that much money at risk and losses, I wound up only getting an offer for an inside cabin. For me to be putting so much money at risk, not being sober, making those decisions, not abiding by any type of budget, and not even knowing the risk versus reward, the risk was so much higher than what the reward turned out to be. And I definitely don't do that anymore. But I have to confess that that first cruise, not understanding anything about cruising or the casino programs, I definitely spent more money than I had intended to. Let's talk about phone settings. So I knew to keep my phone on airplane mode. So that step I did know, and I put my phone on airplane mode. However, there were times when I took my phone off airplane mode before we actually landed in a port, before my Verizon phone was able to connect to a cell tower. It automatically connected to like Cruise at Sea or Sell at Sea. Sell at Sea, I think is what it's called. But Verizon was automatically charging me a daily rate for these cruise ports that I didn't realize were not included in my international plan. And I wound up having an extra few $100s on my cell phone bill because I didn't realize how and when turning off airplane mode really does matter. That's something that I think is really important to understand. Your cell phone plan, what's included in each country, in each city, to ensure that you're actually in the port itself where your cell phone connection exists before you turn off that airplane mode, because it'll just start looking for a cell tower and it may connect to one of the cell towers at sea. My particular package that I have with Verizon, it doesn't ask me ahead of time if I approve it or if I want to connect to it. It connects me, it charges me, and then it says, welcome to this particular country, and here's your C-Day pass for X dollars. That's something I did not understand. I'm still working to figure that out, to be perfectly honest. I've done that a few times, even this year. So I definitely need to make sure that I'm in an actual port where Verizon is offering cell services and not incur those additional expenses without actually even honestly needing them. Next costly mistake that I made on my first cruise is I did not double check that the credit cards I was using did not incur international transaction fees. That is a huge mistake, and it sounds small, just a couple of percent here or a couple percent there, but over time that can really add up to a lot of charges, especially if you're booking hotels and restaurants and shopping. So it's really important to understand the credit cards that you have and make sure that you're using credit cards that do not incur additional foreign transaction fees. because that also cost me extra money that if I had done my research and understood better, would have not incurred so many additional fees. And this is definitely a mistake that I don't make these days. Next cruise confession is I was double tipping and not even realizing it. So I didn't understand that automatic gratuities were being added. I didn't have reading glasses on when I went to the spa. And so when I just signed the receipt, I added a tip, just like you naturally do when you go to the salon or the spa. It wasn't until the end of that first cruise, after 14 days, that I realized that not only was I paying the 18% gratuity, but I was also adding in another 20% tip on top of that. And if you want to tip on top of that, absolutely, that's your choice. But I think at that time, I didn't realize that I was double tipping. So definitely take a look at your receipts or ask someone to help explain them to you to make sure that you understand that if you are going to be adding a tip, that it's your choice and decision to double tip, because at that time I didn't know the difference and I didn't realize I was double tipping. Two big mistakes that I made on this cruise kind of go hand in hand. One was I bought a lot of souvenirs for people and gifts for people. Again, I was in that mode of A, I'm on vacation, B, I might never be here again. Overinflated the value of being able to buy things in these new countries and new cities that I had never been to. And I wound up buying so many things that I had to pick up an extra piece of luggage. Check that piece of luggage back to the US because I did not have a direct flight. So I actually had to pay for that luggage to come back to London. I think I went to London for a few days. And then on my next flight, I also had to pay for that extra check luggage to get back to the US. So think about your souvenir shopping or gift shopping and the space that you have and the weight of your current luggage, because if you're paying hundreds of dollars extra, like, are those souvenirs really worth that extra cost? Trust me, by the end of this, my cruise got very expensive. Probably tripled in cost. No, it actually more than tripled in cost because I bought art. Okay. I do regret buying that art, I'm not going to lie. It was beautiful at the time, but it did not come with the expectations that I had in my head of the value that my heart had connected to it. So yeah, really think through those decisions, even talk them out with someone that may have a stronger point of view that's not on that cruise ship and not in the middle of a very strong, talented, persuasive auctioneer. Okay, so along with buying too many souvenirs, I had this idea that it would be really cool to pick up meats and cheeses and delicacies from these Baltic countries and do like a charcuterie board, because I love doing charcuterie boards. And I usually overdo them for 20 people when maybe there's 4 of us. It's just something that I find really fun to do. Flowers with your salami and just making it all fancy and beautiful on this cool piece of wood. I just find it really enjoyable. It's usually the thing that I'm asked to bring to Thanksgiving is charcuterie or appetizers. So I had another personal connection to that. In some of these countries, they have markets where you can buy like reindeer or like black bear meat or different fish or salmon or definitely amazing cheeses. There was a couple mistakes that I made with this. My first was I wasn't paying attention to which things I was buying actually need to be refrigerated. And I wound up snacking on some of them and having to throw away some of them because I couldn't keep these foods at the right temperature to get me all the way back to Arizona. So I wound up wasting money on things that actually needed refrigeration because it was kind of cool and chilly in the air and I wasn't paying attention that, we were in Finland. The things that I was buying were actually coming out of a refrigerator case, not something sealed on a shelf. The next thing I didn't realize is there's certain rules in certain countries of what meats and types of meats that you can actually bring through customs. And I didn't understand these rules and regulations. There were items in some of my carry-on luggage that I had to declare in customs they brought me through, searched my luggage. Some of the things I wound up having to throw away if they weren't in the right type of sealed packaging that met their requirements. So this may sound small, but some of these delicacies I had bought, like this caviar and some things that were super unique and not inexpensive. And I wound up also having to forfeit those items before I was able to get all the way home at that time. The things that I did bring, they turned into a really cool charcuterie board, and I think it's a really fun idea to do something like this, but you just need to do your research and not bring back things that you actually aren't allowed to bring to the States or that require special refrigeration in order for them to stay edible. All in all, to be perfectly honest, I ate too much food. I drank too much alcohol. I spent too much money. I spent too much time on excursions and events and activities that didn't actually turn out to be what I expected them to be. I spent way more money than I had anticipated, especially on art that I never wound up hanging. Do I regret going on my first cruise? Absolutely not. If I hadn't gone on that cruise, I wouldn't be sitting here today living on cruise ships. I don't regret my experience at all. I have definitely learned a lot along the way, and do not make those mistakes. At least I don't make those exact mistakes. I still make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm still making mistakes, but I definitely don't make those mistakes or mistakes that are that expensive. I'm hoping that with this information, you're able to not make the same mistakes that I made. Just stay away from those traps, especially when you're drinking or tired or hungry. You know, that hangry is never helpful either. And really think through those financial decisions before just putting them on your account, because it's pretty easy to do. There's no exchange of cash. You're just signing a little slip of paper. It doesn't even feel like real money. So it's really easy to spend more money on a cruise ship than you realize. Keep track of your folio. Make sure you know how to log into your account and double check and know what you're spending, and also make sure there's no errors on your folio of things that you didn't actually purchase. That does happen from time to time. It's taken a while for me to have the courage to share with you my honest mistakes and confessions. I really appreciate your support and watching my channel and supporting the community. I'm pretty confident you're a lot smarter and more experienced to not make the same mistakes that I made. I hope you find this video enjoyable. I truly appreciate your support, and I hope to see you on a cruise one day. Thanks.